This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC Vegas 102, Cannonier versus Rodrigues. Give you my thoughts and predictions on the entire. It's 13 bouts listed, but allegedly one of the fights dropped. But I'll still give you my thoughts on it in case it's just a bunch of bullshit. But yeah, it's a interesting card. I say that often when I'm not sure about the quality of opponents and the quality of fighters. But there's a couple debuts that are being made that I'm going to keep an eye on. And the main event, obviously, it's going to prove if Rodrigues is a top-level guy and where is Cannonier at this very point. Like, he's 40 years old, about to hit, like, maybe 41, and he's been hanging in there with the top of the division. I mean, he fought the number 2 guy in the world. He fought the former champion. He beat the former champion, and oh, boy, I'm going to lay into that guy in Strickland. And now he's fighting RoboCop, Rodrigues, a dude that I'll get into the breakdown, but I have my thoughts on him. But a guy that can very much contend in that top 5. No spoilers. But yeah, before I do that, I wanted to give you my very quick thoughts on the previous card, the 312. And I typically break it down fight by fight. I'm just going to give you key information on these. I'm going to make it more of a comedic breakdown, but starting off with Anshul Jubilee versus Quillan Soukild. So with this, I will say I got to give props to Jubilee for having the most successful UFC career of an Indian ever, because him lasting 19 seconds was a lot better than I expected. Mikaev versus Jusei, it shows that if you spam one technique over and over and you're fighting a Frenchman, really doesn't know what to do. It should really piss me off. Let me get off to that. Rong Zhu versus Cody Steele. No surprise there. I did pick Cody, but it was like a reluctant, like, he can win this if he's not an idiot, but he proved to be an absolute idiot. He is, no surprises. Rong Zhu gave him an ass whooping that he needs. Very curious to see where the community is on Cody Steele, because they're going to give him an easier fight next time, and I'm sure he's going to beat the shit out of him. No problem, but he needs to grapple, and he needs to not be a moron, but it's probably hard for him. Topuria defeats Thickness. I mean, he suplexed the shit out of him. I was impressed by him. Not anything too spectacular, but he handled Thickness well. He took Thickness very well. I mean, he got a hold of Thickness. Wasn't a problem whatsoever. He was able to just control Thickness very easily. Wang, oh man, I'm going to give the award of the TigerBomb of the prelims to Bruna Brazil. I kept hearing people talking about, like, oh, she's going to look better. She's looked improved. No, she sucks. She's a bum. Not even Caio Borralho could fix her. They call her the special one for a reason. This girl is lacking of the high IQ. Kong Wang looked every bit of, man, I really wish, like going back, I'm like, I should have taken out a mini loan on my house and put it all on Kong Wang, because there was no way she was going to lose. Most improved fighter, the TigerBomb, most improved fighter of the card, Tom Nolan. I was very impressed by how he handled Vyacheslav. I picked against him, but I knew he had that in him. With the controlling of the distance, I thought at one point he was going to go full, to be safe with the YouTube, full heatard, but he didn't. He stayed very composed, very impressed by that performance, because beating the crap out of Vyacheslav everywhere is not an easy feat, especially on the feet. That was very impressive. Gabriel Santos defeats Jack Jenkins. Nothing really to say there. Jack did have his moment, and then Gabriel Santos decided, hey, I am the much better fighter. Let me beat his ass. No problem there. They have yet to release the scorecards officially. They released Tom Nolan versus Borshev 2 times, the UFC did, so I don't know how they scored round number 1, and I am dying to know how they scored round number 1 for Jenkins and Santos. Jake Matthews defeats Prado. Nothing really special there. Kind of proves that Jake Matthews is still very low IQ. I mean, he handled Prado easily, but, you know, he doesn't mitigate risk very well. Keep that in mind. Jimmy Crute versus Bellato. Some people might be thinking, man, I got robbed on my Jimmy Crute ticket. You didn't. You lost. Well, I guess it's a push, but Jimmy Crute is not the same fighter. Bellato gave him that top mount. Bellato proved he was a better fighter, but he also proved he's a much more ignoramus fighter. When I had found out that he used to play American football, I was, oh my God, the CTE is real with this one, and he very much so proved it early on. After the second round, he started whipping his ass like I expected he would do, at least in the late round number 1. But nope, dummy. I don't know if I could ever bet on this guy again, but if he were to fight Crute again, I would max bet him in a heartbeat. Teixeira defeats Justin Tafa. Some might say that Tafa is a bum. of the of the main card, I would disagree. The fact is, he got hit with a really good shot. He kept fighting, even though he, curled up as in a ball, which some might call the bitch position. He did much more than another guy in the main card. Weili Zhang defeats Tatiana Suarez. Suarez, here's the funny thing about that, and I do believe this. Fight could have been a lot different had Suarez not jumped the guillotine. Her guillotine is the slowest fucking guillotine, but very effective. It didn't work against Weili Zhang. Had she maintained control in that position and tried to get Weili Zhang back down, I think things might have gone a little bit differently, because at that point, Weili Zhang knew, like, hey, I can out grapple this girl. And at that point, she started taking over. So props to her. I knew something was fucked up when Tatiana Suarez went from the underdog to the favorite. So I was already doubting myself. Like, damn, I should have gone with Weili Zhang, because, like, something's up afoot. And then Sean Strickland, staff or no staff. I picked Sean. I specifically said, if this dude makes some adjustments and just throws more output, I think he has a chance to win. He did the opposite. He threw less output. I even said, just have Alex in the corner say Chama, and he refused to say Chama until like maybe the fourth or fifth round. Then I'm like, yo, it's going to be a different Sean. He ignored the commands of the great Alex Pereira, and he just went out there and bitched out. So he is the TigerBomb of the main card, because that was one of the most absolutely boring, lackluster performances. And I mean, Justin Tafa showed more fight than Sean Strickland. And I like Sean, but my theory on him previously was, when he won the belt, he didn't want to be champion. He didn't know how to handle that type of fame because he is mentally unstable. I thought, hey, he's gotten past that. He's going to want the belt more. He kind of knows what it feels like. He's able to take that responsibility. But I think at this point, he is mentally damaged goods. He has gone from that kid who wanted to, prove his parents wrong and prove everybody wrong. And now that I think he's done that, he's kind of checked that off of his mind. So he's not as hungry as he used to be. And now he's fighting a lot more safe. And I'm not a fan of that kind of behavior. So Dricus keeps Dricusing. I hope to God he does not beat Alex Pereira if they do, because this dude is just weaponizing bad technique. And that's incredible. This dude would not stop. He barely landed super clean on Sean, yet he still was whipping his ass, just throwing. And that's like, props to Dricus. I gotta say, I love me some Dricus, but I did think that Sean had a chance, but Sean never had a chance. But yeah, let's get back to this card here at hand. Cannonier versus Rodrigues. First fight of the night at welterweight. We've got Chaos Williams versus Gabriel Bonfim. Bonfim, minus 225. Comeback on Chaos Williams is plus 185. So off the bat, the Bonfim brothers, they're both on this card. There is like a back and forth contention of who is the better fighter. Bonfim Gabriel is the better grappler. He's the taller guy, and I think he gets away with having just the higher athleticism. He's maxed out with athleticism, but his striking, although serviceable, it's not polished or buttoned up. It's just not clean enough for me. He doesn't tend to really move his head. He does get hit way too much. I mean, when he fought the dude that was powered by gay fuel in Nicholas Dalby, I mean, Dalby was landing on him early. He was having trouble getting him down. And when you look at his record, he is beating decent competition, but it's usually guys that initiate the grappling with him where he can get that nasty guillotine, because his jiu-jitsu game and his submission game is fantastic. He doesn't like pressure. And for Chaos Williams, he's a type of hot and cold fighter as well. At plus 185, I like him to at least land on Gabriel Bonfim and maybe hurt him enough to get the knockout. We know what Chaos can do. He's going to be the cleaner fighter. At this point, they're not too far off in height. Normally, guys that are taller and have very good striking and range can give Chaos Williams trouble, like Randy Brown, and now the middleweight in Michel Pereira. Both of them gave him a lot of fits with their movement. Bonfim, when you look at his striking style, and you can even see it on the Instagram, him and his brother are trading shots, but he is like buck wild, closes his eye, swings. He does have fast hands. He has good knees. He has good everything. It's just the defense and the boxing is not where it needs to be against a guy that hits as hard as Chaos Williams. And this dude, if he touches you just right, you will go down. Chaos even fought a guy very similar to Bonfim in the now unfortunate, I don't want to say deceased, but his career is in, I already forgot his name. Not Femmelsberger, Miguel Baeza. Back in the day, Miguel Baeza was a really good fighter until just, you know, life. And he eventually cracked him. He did eat a lot of low kicks here. I would expect Bonfim to try to keep it on the outside, but with that reach advantage for Chaos Williams of what, 5 inches, 4.5, I'm sure he's going to land. He will set things up, jab into the body. It's just give me Chaos Williams to get the knockout in the first 2 rounds. I'm not confident because I do think Bonfim, if he does initiate the grappling, he can have some success. Chaos has pretty decent takedown defense. It's just that massive power of Chaos Williams and the fact that Bonfim does not really move his head. I don't like his defense. His defense is typically, being the taller, longer guy, but he keeps his head way too high up in the air. Give me Chaos Williams to get a knockout here. At these odds, it should not be this kind of a runaway for Bonfim. He is not a 2-1 favorite against Chaos Williams, a guy that he will put your lights out. It's just ridiculous to me. Next bout, we got a strawweight bout. We got Angela Hill versus Caitlin Souza, minus 125 for Hill. Come back on Souza, plus 100. Now, Angela Hill, she's 17 and 14. She's 40 years old. She's been at this for a long time. This is a very good matchup for her in my eyes. I don't really value Caitlin Souza, nor do I really value her striking against anyone competent. Now, you might look at her last 2 wins and think she's like amazing. She beat Marnik Man. Marnik Man is one of the worst fighters the UFC's ever even brought into the UFC, and even I thought she could have success against Caitlin Souza, which she actually did at the end of the 3rd round, near the end, where I would have given her that round. The thing with Souza is she is a bit of a low volume output type of striker. She does hit hard. And generally, those who throw more output, those who can actually engage in taking her down, because her takedown defense is pretty crap, can have a lot of success against her. Angela Hill is that kind of fighter, a lot of output, attacks the body constantly, nasty knees. She's very strong. Her jiu-jitsu game has tremendously improved, her mat game as well. It's just the age, obviously. She has fought the better competition as long as she does not get cracked, because Souza does throw bombs. But in reality, in retrospect, when you look at the Yasmin Jauregui fight, and let me tell you, when I was there live at the Sphere, like I knew Jauregui is just levels above Caitlin Souza. She 100% is on paper. In execution, she's not. She got caught with a stupid punch because she has some of the worst round number 1 striking defense I've ever seen it in any fighter. But when you look at it, she was landing output, piecing her up, actually even hurt her to the body. It's just that she got caught and she got choked out. Angela Hill, I would say, has a much better concept of reach, much better concept of range, and better chin. Give me Angela Hill by a decision. I think she can actually start implementing the ground game, tiring out Caitlin Souza, clinching her up. Souza, she needs that space. When you make it a dogfight, and Angela Hill's really good at that. She's been in those recently, even against Tabitha Ricci, who would absolutely smash Caitlin Souza. Give me Angela Hill in this spot. Next bout, we've got Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar, minus 330 for the undefeated Estevam. Come back on Aguilar is a plus 260. Off the bat, Aguilar's a little pit bull. I love this guy. 5'4". He's itty bitty baby boy, tiny reach, but he hits hard. He is 100% a try hard kind of fighter. One of the nastiest guillotines in the game. And the guy is just built like a fire hydrant that could choke you out at any moment. This guy is so much fun to watch. It's just when you look at him skill for skill, he doesn't really have the well-polished striking. I mean, he throws everything really hard. And that ability, like similar to Dricus, he tries really hard. That could get you wins. To me, he lost the Mendonça fight. That was in Mexico. They were going to give it to him anyways, but it's not a robbery because he still, again, even though he was kind of getting dominated on the mat, he would get back up, he would reverse, and then he would try his damnedest, actually landed some shots, and it's hard to deny that the guy has the will to win. This guy actually shows the Mexican fighting spirit, unlike some other dudes that I will be talking about in the coming weeks. As for Estevam, you could look at this guy. He's undefeated, very good grappler. Obviously, he has jiu-jitsu tattooed on his titty there, so he has to have good jiu-jitsu, and he does. He has very good trips. He's a big boy. He did miss weight against Charles Johnson, but even in that fight where he gassed out against Charles, I think he handled Charles in a manner that not many people could do. And I still think he can do that with the current version of Charles. I think that was the current version of Charles, the guy that's on like a 4-fight winning streak. It's just that he was so pissed off that Esteban was too good for him to be able to like finish him in the third round. He's got that kind of grappling. I would expect him to come in and weight. As long as he makes weight, I think he's going to be able to handle Aguilar. I don't think he's going to be an idiot and put himself in the guillotine like Nichols did. You look at what Stuart Nickel did. The dude took him down. He controlled him. He just could not control him well enough, and he put himself in a position to get guillotined. And I still to this day think that had Nickel not been a moron, because in that fight, I even said, like, this is the best fighter Nichols ever fought. And sometimes is that enough, even though you might be the more skilled guy. That guy also had a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He just got caught because he didn't respect the squeeze of Aguilar. Esteban will respect that. He is very good at getting takedowns. He is very good at flipping motherfuckers to the ground. And with that huge reach advantage, I don't expect Aguilar to be landing that clean the same way he did on the chinniest dude ever in the flyweight division, like Shannon Ross. That, man, I went back and rewatched that Shannon Ross knockout for Aguilar just to be sure that it's not going to land on Esteban. Shannon Ross was so afraid of maybe getting taken down. His hands were low. He was going to counter with an uppercut, thinking that it was going to be a takedown attempt. So his hands were all the way down, face exposed. No doubt he's going to get knocked out. Esteban's going to keep his hands up. If he is going to engage in a clinch, he will engage. He's going to use upper body kind of throws to keep Aguilar down. Put in the body triangle. Make this as easy as possible for you. Work the ground and pound. Try to get a choke. Aguilar is not, posed to getting choked out. It's just going to be interesting that if he does get tired or if he misses weight, Aguilar is the kind of guy that can ruin a parlay. This guy is so much fun to watch, and him being on a 3-fight win streak is impressive. I really thought he would have lost here and there. I really think he should be on a 2-fight losing streak, because I do still think he lost to Mendoza, and if Stuart Nickel wasn't a moron, he would have beat him. So give me Esteban to, I don't want to say make it look easy, because he is the better grappler. He's the bigger dude, and the fact that he's judo flipping dudes like the 5'6", 5'7" Charles Johnson, he's going to be able to give Jesus Aguilar a ride. So give me Esteban to win this one by a decision, if not possibly even a TKO. Next bout, we've got Walter Walker versus Don'Tale Mayes. Now that Jamal Pogues is allegedly out of the UFC, Don'Tale Mayes may be the worst heavyweight in the roster, second only to possibly Walter Walker. So this is a fight for who is the least shittiest heavyweight in the UFC. Now with Walter, he's minus 180. He's 27 years old. He's an anomaly to me. I don't know how to properly gauge him. Similar with Don'Tale Mayes, it's a tough fight, because no matter what you do, you're probably going to eat shit on this matchup. So I would advise probably stay away from it. It is kind of a dog or pass. Don'Tale Mayes, his takedown defense has definitely improved. And you might be saying, hey, he completely shit the bed and he looked awful against that guy, Shamil Gaziev. But Gaziev, he's a much better wrestler than Walter Walker, and he has a ton more power than Walter. Walker is he's a big, powerful guy, but his striking's not there. He panic wrestles. Man, if Don'Tale Mayes can keep it on the feet, I think Mayes can pull this out. Walker, he's going to have to make tremendous improvements, and Don'Tale Mayes' takedown defense has to be completely like downgraded for this to be a Walker win, to make it that easy. If this is a competitive matchup, I think that Don'Tale can actually start landing some decent shots on Walter Walker to make it look really awkward and ugly, where he's shooting poorly, and then Don'Tale, he's a big boy, gets on top of him, he can land some good shots. I don't like this matchup. I don't even want to watch it, but this is kind of a dog or pass for me. I don't think Walter is that kind of guy. I think that if he can get stuffed, which if Brzezinski can be stuffing your takedowns and getting back up, maybe Don'Tale Mayes can as well. Not confident in either of these guys. I think Walker is, he's got a really nasty padded record. Give me Mayes by a decision here. Next bout, we've got Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. Now, we got the debut of Elijah Smith. Gilbert Smith is his father. He is minus 230. for Smith, comeback on Morales is plus 195. Why does my screen keep fucking flickering? It's annoying. But Morales, what most people don't know is that he kind of had a lackluster like first round in the UFC. He got like TKO leg kicked by Chris Gutierrez. This guy was a bit of a jobber, but when you look at him outside of the UFC, he's tremendously improved. Similar to another guy on this card, his jiu-jitsu's gotten better, his striking's gotten better. He's just a dog all around, but he is a bit of a journeyman. He's the kind of guy that is a good name on your record because he's a respected guy, right? He's still tough. He's got that dog in him, and he will bring a fight to you if you're not quite ready for it. And Elijah Smith, he is 22 years old. He's tremendously talented. Okay. He's got a wrestling background. He's got a good jiu-jitsu background. His father's in his corner. And let me tell you, his father, Gilbert Smith, a former UFC fighter as well, the dude, like often you get like father and son pairings. I really like the way he talks to his son, especially in his fight in the Contender Series where he fought a tough dude and Aaron Tua. And there's a moment, and I'll get to the specific moment, but there's a moment where he calms them down. He's like, "We don't want this situation to happen again." And that situation was his first his first professional loss, which was to uh, Dana White Contender Series alum fighter in Junior Cortez, who he's fought twice. This dude fought, funny enough, two killers. He fought Christian Rodriguez to get into the UFC. He couldn't beat him, and he fought Peyton Talbot. And I thought he did well against Peyton, and that's his only official loss. And when you look at it, he was doing well. And then in the third round, he kind of slowed down a bit and he got caught and he got knocked out. In the Contender Series, similar thing kind of happened. He got tired against Aaron Tua. And if I'm going to be honest with you, Tua is not as polished. He's not as quick. He's just not a full-fledged product, but he is essentially like an Aborigine version of Trevor Peak. This dude is not pretty, but he will put a beating on you. And this dude just smiling at Elijah Smith in the third round, and Smith was visibly fatigued. And had he not kind of swanged and banged with him in the third round in the last few seconds, I don't think Smith would be in the UFC. I don't think Dana White would have accepted him in because at a certain point, he was just not looking quite ready. And I think that last kind of flurry where, they were going back and forth, Tua or Tau, is it his name? Tau? Yeah. Aaron Tau won that third round and he was doing well. He was making Smith look awful, but Smith eventually like bit down on the mouthpiece, started swanging with him. And I think that is what won him the contract. He's like, hey, this guy is talented. I think that if he would have tried wrestling and tried to play it safe, he would not be in the UFC. Let me just say that. But this dude is incredibly talented. My thoughts on him psychologically, which I like to do, I like to bring that up because that's like my expertise. I think this kid, for lack of better terms, I think he's a front runner, and I don't think he wants it. When I look at the sons of UFC fighters or fighters in general, they tend to not have that same drive. Like I don't think Connor's kid is going to be as good as Connor because he is going to fight. The reasoning is he's going to be growing up with, a respected father. He's going to have everything handed to him. And not to say that Elijah Smith had that. It's just more so that sometimes these kids are a little too soft. Not to say that Elijah is, but I don't see that kind of grit in him that he wants it. I think it's one of these, like he's athletic. His dad put him in the sport. He's good at it, but his heart isn't quite there. This dude might want to be a dancer in the background of like music videos. I don't fucking know. Vince, on the other hand, he has no other option. He's going to need to win this fight. He's going to come out here and make it a dog fight. The thing is, I think Smith is just too good for 2 rounds. That third round is going to be such a like deep down dog fight that if Elijah Smith's cardio is not up to point, that I think he can lose that fight. I think at any point Morales could clip him, hurt him. Maybe he shoots in for a terrible takedown, and Morales' front choke game is good. The Darce is Peruvian neckties and shit. Morales is not a great fighter, but he is, well, let me rephrase that. He's not the whole point is that he is a fighter. He does have that dog in him, where Elijah's more like an athlete. So I would say Smith is definitely the more polished, well-rounded guy, prettier, more technical. but he doesn't have that fight in him, which Morales does. He will make it gritty, dirty. He can get cut. He'll come after you. So although he's maybe not the better athlete or just the more technical dude, he does have that fight in him, which I don't quite see in Smith. I mean, when the going gets tough, I see him kind of wilting where Morales will not wilt. So for that, I will go with Smith. I think he does have enough to edge this out where he wins. It's just that Morales runs out of time. That's my thought process on that. I'm not sold on Elijah Smith. I want to see some more grit out of this boy. Next bout, we have got Julia Avila fulfilling her contractually obligated 3-fight career in the UFC. Her contract versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. She is minus 420. Automatically, some losers out there are already like, oh, 420, I'm going to pick her weed. But the Nightmare is her name, Jacqueline the Nightmare. She's going to win this one by a decision. Julia Avila, plus 310. You know, she's going to look out to grapple here against Cavalcanti, who she's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Avila is allegedly a black belt. And one thing I will say, she is looking in really good shape, but she is a 5'7", 36-year-old woman in the UFC. Very simply put, I don't think calf kicks were really a thing when Julia Avila kind of hit the scene. Her biggest win is, well, I guess she's got 2 big wins. I was going to say the biggest win is Gina Mazzani because, you know, screw that whore. But Julija Stolienko is her biggest win, and we saw her against Miesha Tate, who has not been looking good. We've seen the huge steep decline for Miesha Tate, and Julia Avila wasn't able to do anything against her. And for Cavalcanti, she's 27 years old. She's on a really good run right now, and the girl can strike. She's purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and when I mentioned that whole thing about the calf kicks is I think she's going to be utilizing that against Avila, who, you know, for all the homies out there, this girl fights like your Haina trying to defend you from the rucas. You know what I'm saying? She just gets down. She just throws hands. It's not pretty. She fights like a Latina. That's all I say. I mean, sometimes that's enough. Like if she can crack Cavalcanti, that'd be impressive. But the way Cavalcanti fights, she's too technical, always on the outside. Like this girl has some of the best, you know, striking in general in the women's division, and it's fun to see how defensive she could be. Previously, my biggest complaints about her would be that she's a little too like defensive and she doesn't throw too much. But in her last fight against Cornoli, she really put a beating on her. She put a stamp on it, and I actually picked Cornoli mainly because I thought they were going to rob Cavalcanti just as long as Cornoli did enough, and they almost did. They nearly took that from her. A couple judges down there were being a little sneaky. I don't think she's going to have that issue here. I do expect Avila to try to come out here and grapple. I 100% believe that because she's going to have a hard time trying to close the distance on Cavalcanti, especially if she starts landing those kicks at distance and at range. Give me Cavalcanti by a decision here. I'm pretty confident that she's going to come out here and win. Julia Avila, like again, I really do believe she's coming out here just to fulfill her obligation, but I think the sport completely passed her by. And now we've got girls like Cavalcanti on the rise, way too good for her, just way too fast, way too technical. Yeah, Cavalcanti by a decision. Next bout, we have got Rodolfo Viera versus Andre Petroski. This fight initially gave me a couple fits because I'm looking at Petroski, who is a plus 175, and I'm thinking, does he have a path to victory here? And I initially said, yes, he does. He of course he has. And then Rodolfo Viera is minus 215. And ultimately, other than the fact that I don't like communists in Petroski, and I'm picking Viera, the reason I'm kind of initially like leaning Petroski was he can control where the fight goes, right? I think he's going to have the better wrestling, but for how long will he have that better wrestling? He has pretty bad cardio, especially when pushed. And although I'm not a fan of Petroski in any manner, I do find him the kind of fighter that can kind of weasel himself to a victory. The guy can definitely just stay on the outside. His striking's not god-awful, but his chin can be a little wonky where he can get clipped by a jab or he can get dropped by a hip. This guy knocked himself out going for a takedown. And yeah, I'm not necessarily fond of the threat of Rodolfo Vieira, who, yeah, you could look at him and say, hey, his striking's not necessarily all that great. Like he got hurt by a personal bum of mine in what's his name? Not Stoltzfus. I like Stoltzfus now. And Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage to me is one of the worst middleweights of all time. This guy is like a head case for me. And I like breaking him down psychologically and making fun of the cuckery that he does. But when I do see that, I'm like, you're letting this guy hurt you and drop you. I'm like, that's not a good look. But ultimately, I think Vieira's striking has come a long way. I think his cardio has come a long way since the fluffy beatdown. Like when you look at the Curtis fight, he did not stop going for takedowns himself. And it's not even the fact that he needs to be the better wrestler. I think he just needs to push Andre and make him work. And if it does become a kickboxing match, I do think Petroski is going to be the faster guy, but Vieira is going to be the more powerful guy. I think his jab is actually pretty solid, and I think he can actually hurt Petroski at any point. So to me, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a sure thing that I'm sorry, Rodolfo Vieira is going to come out here and like destroy Petroski. I do think Petroski can make it close and even maybe take a slimy little decision based off of him just kind of backpedaling and is essentially the way I put it, pussying out in the fight and just maybe darting in and landing a few shots. If he can defend the takedowns of Vieira, yeah, I think it can be close, but eventually I think Vieira will get him to the ground. This is a different kind of squeeze, different kind of black belt. When you're getting arm triangles, even against like guys with no grappling on like Petrosian, inside the mount without even extending all the way to the side with the arm triangle, that's a different kind of squeeze. His athleticism and taking the back the way he did against Dustin Stoltzfus, highly impressive. If Petroski does try to engage in the grappling, I'd love to see that because like these two going at it would be cool. But ultimately, the way I see it, Petroski, as much as he does do grappling outside the UFC against really good grapplers, there's a guy here named the Black Belt Hunter. He doesn't necessarily look all that great. So Petroski's going to really need to get on his bike here to do anything. But I do see a chance for Vieira to actually get a finish, knockout, submission. If you do end up going with Vieira, because I'm not here to tell you what to bet. I'm just here to give you my thoughts and analysis on this. Like, hopefully you didn't bet Cody Steele because that was a fucking disgrace. But in this, if you do go with him, I would kind of lean towards just the money line. I mean, you can also go with like, whatever you want, like TKO submission. Submission would be more than likely what you're thinking. But Petroski, again, he's been working on it. I think it's going to be easier to knock him out than to try to submit him. So give me Rodolfo Vieira. I'm going to say knockout round number 2. Not confident in that. Next bout, we have got the return of the golden boy, Edmund Shahbazyan versus Dylan Budka. Now, this sucks because Edmund, man, what's insane? The thought that back in like, 2023, you would think, hey, he's going to Extreme Couture. They're going to fix Edmund, and they didn't fix a damn thing. He was essentially just Sean Strickland's, punching bag. And yeah, it's really hard at minus 280 to kind of view Shahbazyan as a guy that you can rely on, even against Dylan Budka. Budka, regardless of what you think of the guy, very good wrestler. He's a tough dude, good cardio. He didn't show it in his debut against Cesar Almeida, but Almeida's on a tear right now. And we saw what he did to that dude who may or may not have done things in Texas at a club or an alley, allegedly, in Al Hassan. But yeah, those punches to the body that he ate, I don't blame him for slowing down. So he's plus 230. This one sucks because it's obviously that this is a fight for Shahbazyan. They're trying to get him a win. Budka, I think the UFC has essentially said, hey, this guy is no good. If he can't, man, like Budka's supposed to be this guy that has decent enough takedown defense. Like when I looked at his fight with Bekoev, and we saw what Bekoev did to that, damn, what's his name? What is his name? He just got knocked out. Bekoev. Sorry, let me go off and look up what his name is. That giant dude who got slammed by Cody Brundage. His name is Zach Reese. What he did to Zach Reese, yes, he did hit him in the back of the head, whatever, but he looked good in that fight. Against Budka, it was a close 5 round fight. They were going back and forth. He was stuffing takedowns. That's what made me think like this guy sucks. Bikoev, if he's going to like a hard fight, 5 round fight with Budka, this guy's not UFC caliber. I mean, he got to win. We'll see what happens with him later. But yeah, Budka is he's an anomaly, man. Like he's out here beating guys that went to split decisions with better guys. Like in his contender series fight against Hanekom. Hanekom actually, I forget who he went to a split with. I think it was Ikram. So you would look at that. That kind of MMA math is weird because Dylan Budka, given the like MMA math around him, should be a much better fighter. So that does give me a little bit of a worry about the guy. But on the feet, Edmonds too big, too powerful, hits too hard. You know, he shat the bed against Gerald Mearshart, where there was moments. Funny, I'm rewatching the fight. I'm like, how are they not stopping this fight? How does he lose this fight? He got tired. He got tired blowing his wad. He did not fight smart, and that's the thing about Edmond. Like, no matter how much you train this guy to not do anything dumb, he does things dumb. Like he played too much against Gerald Mearshart on the ground, gassed himself out, and there's actually funny enough. I will be talking about a moment in the main event, but sometimes just letting a dude hit the ground is enough. Let it happen and let the ref come in if you just want to walk away. So I think Shahbazyan 100% can get a TKO in the first 2 rounds, probably round number 2 if he's smart. He tends to be pretty smart in the first 2 rounds. It's just if the relentless pressure of Budka, who will be moving forward, shooting at the legs, and he tires out Edmond, it's going to be a nice payday for anyone who's just blindly fading Edmond. So give me Edmond to at least for the first round. I think this is very much a dog or pass kind of situation, maybe a prop situation for Shahbazyan by knockout, or a live betting situation for Budka, where he will get takedowns, he will get top control. The guy's strong, man. Like the dude's not a terribly bad fighter. It's just he's I don't quite think they've been giving him the right competition. I think they kind of thrown him to the wolves with like high level competition. This guy was only like 7-2 when he came into the UFC. So despite the fact that Shahbazyan has fought the much better competition, I do think that Budka is very live here. So that's kind of how I would play it. Knockout Shahbazyan or Budka by a just money line. But yeah, give me Shahbazyan currently. I'm not a fan of that. Next bout. So Jose Delgado versus Connor Matthews. Minus 230 for Delgado. Comeback on Matthews is plus 190. So Delgado, he trains at the MMA lab. He's 5'11", 73-inch reach. And I'm trying to think here if I should just get into it or this guy's going to destroy Connor Matthews. He's going to brutalize this guy. The way I put it is Jose Delgado is going to murder Connor Matthews and take his social security card so he does not get deported to Mexico. This dude fights very similar to Steve Garcia, but more Mexican than him. This guy is a savage. He throws ridiculous output. This guy, the way I wrote down my notes here, he's a buzzsaw. Like everything, you cannot get close to him without him hurting you with a knee, with an elbow. This guy throws everything at you. He does not stop. He may not have as much power as like a Steve Garcia, but just the output that he throws is just overwhelming, dudes. This guy has power in the punches, elbows, knees. And the funny thing is the guy he beat to get into the UFC, this Ernie Juarez, I think he's a much better fighter than Connor Matthews, okay? And the way I put Connor Matthews is I consider him to be one of the 3 bum kings of the featherweight division in the UFC, okay? And they've all fought each other. So the lowest of the totem pole of these 3 bum kings are Connor Matthews at the very bottom. Think of it as like Street Fighter, but the reverse, where you're fighting the 3 guys before you get to Bison. You've got Vega, which is Connor Matthews. He's at the bottom. You've got Balrog, who is it even sucks saying this because like you shouldn't even put him in the same sentence. In Dennis Bazooka, who is like, dude, if you're getting hurt by Dennis Bazooka, man, he got TKO'd by Dennis Bazooka, and he's like pretty close to the bottom. Just luckily, Connor Matthews is there to be there as the base, and then the king, the Sagat of these guys is Francis Marshall, and compared to these two, Francis Marshall is like edging to get out of that bad category. But again, at least he is the Sagat of the three. And man, he's also getting hurt by Francis Marshall. He fought him as well. This dude, to me, he's a very skilled guy. Okay, he's got every skill you could need. He's got decent wrestling, decent striking. He's not bad. It's just at this level, not the amateur level, not the regional level. When you're fighting dudes like the Jose Delgados, the guys who, I put this often out there, that when a guy has a Carlos Condit record, what I mean by that is there was a point in time where Carlos Condit, one of my favorite fighters ever, he had an equal amount of knockouts to submissions, and Jose Delgado has that. He has all finishes, equally knockouts, equally submissions. Dude is absolutely dangerous everywhere. And when I say this Ernie Juarez guy is much better than Connor Matthews, and I mean it, like I had my doubts. I'm like, maybe Ernie's going to come out here and get the upset, because this guy is super well rounded. He's a good wrestler, good striking, and Jose knocked him out with a flying knee. This dude, again, he will put hands on you. He's going to run through Connor Matthews. He's going to knock him out. I just don't know when. And the thing about Delgado is, because he's so, knockout submission, it's hard to prop him. Inside the distance is fine enough for me. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm probably going to parlay Delgado. I don't care. I mean, it's going to take a miracle for Connor to come out here and beat him, because at this very moment, I think Delgado is just on a warpath. I mean, even if Connor can steal 2 rounds early, that third round for Connor is going to be absolutely like a ticking time bomb. It's going to happen. So give me Delgado to be the Jubilee of this card and get destroyed by, I'm sorry, give me Matthews to be the Jubilee. I don't know if I said Delgado. Delgado to be the guy to knock out Jubilee in whatever, Connor Matthews. So yeah, I think Delgado's going to run right through this guy. Yeah, he's a performance of the night. They probably already wrote him the check. Next bout, we've got interesting lightweight bout between Ismail Bonfim versus Nazim Sadykhov. Just checking the time here. Bonfim minus 145, come back on Sadykhov. Black Wolf is plus 120. After kind of going back and forth, it came down to Bonfim just being better at this point than Sadykhov. Sadykhov, he is, I call him the Gabagooli, because the dude sounds straight New Yorker. Like when I heard him talk, I was like, this guy can't be from like what is it called? Azerbaijan. I'm like, this guy can't be from like anywhere other than like the straight out of Brooklyn. This guy sounds just super fucking Brooklyn. And dude's 100% a New Yorker, and the dude is tough. I'll give him that, but I think he's a little too slow. Given that I believe this is Orthodox versus Southpaw. Yeah, with Bonfim, funny enough, even in his loss, let me explain it to you this way. The reason I kind of decided Bonfim's going to win it. In his loss to Benoit Saint-Denis, I was more impressed by that loss than I was with the wins of Sadykhov. And to explain, when you rethink about that fight without watching the tape on the Bonfim versus Saint-Denis, you would think this guy got punked out. He got kicked to the body a ton of times. He got taken down. He got submitted easily. That wasn't the case, actually. He did look bad early, but with Saint-Denis at that time, he kind of fought with that invincibility. And at a moment, yeah, he was putting it to Bonfim, but Bonfim later in that round was really putting it to Saint-Denis. He was attacking the body. He was stuffing the takedowns. He was putting that pressure, as I kind of expected he would. It just, what ended up happening is, despite, I think, Bonfim leaning towards winning that round, that moment where that just death grip of Saint-Denis got down Bonfim, he took his back. Bonfim made a really bad mistake. He wasn't fighting hands correctly. He was defending well. It just eventually got sunk in with that rear naked choke, and he had no choice. It was a nasty, nasty grip from a nasty dude at the time. And in that fight, despite him losing in the first round, like I liked the determination, the grit, and the fight he was showing in that fight. Sadykhov, all three of his fights in the UFC have been lackluster. I essentially max bet him against Evan Elder. I'm like, this guy is tough. He gets better as the fight goes on, and I'm having a sweat because Evan Elder was winning that fight, and I'm thinking I made a huge mistake. He ends up cutting him with that knee, and I'm like, yo, this guy's tough. He will keep going forward, and he ended up getting me that cash. It was awesome, but it was like a learning lesson. And then they give him McKinney, and I'm like, yo, should be easy. This dude's getting taken down by McKinney. He's getting controlled, and by the luck of God, it was McKinney. He got tired. He got his back taken. He got choked out. And then I also bet against him. In this case, I actually bet against him, thinking, "Yo, I don't think Sadykhov's is that guy." Against Borshev, and Borshev was putting the boots to him. He was just looking invincible. And then he does hurt him in the second, gets a 10-8. By the grace of God, he should have lost that fight. Had there been horrible judges, and there would have been two of them that just said, nah, it's a 10-9, he would have lost that fight. Because that third round, think about that. In that third round, after he beat the shit out of Slava Claus, Slava won the third round to make it a draw. And I'm just not uber impressed by the guy. He's a good striker. I just don't see him being the kind of striker that can compete with Bonfim. I mean, he's a dog, I'll give him that. But I think Bonfim is just a little bit more technical. I think him being the smaller Bonfim brother, because of it, although he has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, his jiu-jitsu game isn't as good as his brother's, but his striking is. I think his defense is good, attacks the body well, sets up his punches well, good jabs, double jab overhands. This guy has power. He's got pop. He's got takedown defense. He will mix in takedowns. His cardio looked improved in the fight against Vink Pichel, and it's really hard to 30-27 Vink Pichel, and he beat the crap out of him in that fight. Give me Bonfim by a decision. I just think he's going to have more output. I think he's just going to look better. He's going to have better defense than Sadykhov. Being that it's going to be a split stance, it might be a bit of an issue because the body kicks from Sadykhov will be there for the liver shot to Bonfim. So it's going to be fascinating, right? The odds are close for a reason. I like Bonfim in this spot. I think out of the two, he might be actually the better fighter in this division, in the lightweight division, where I can see him going further than his older brother, where I see him getting pressured a lot. And maybe once he hits like that higher echelon, his game's going to get figured out. Like, don't shoot on him and just beat the crap out of his body. Whereas opposed to the younger Bonfim, I think he's got a better chin. I think he's more of a dog than his brother, essentially. So give me Ismail Bonfim by a very fun decision, a very fun fight. Next bout, we've got Calvin Kattar versus Youssef Zalal. Now, I was going back and forth with a dude on Discord, the TigerBomb MMA and shit Discord, free for all. More of a casual place where I talk a bunch of crap and make stupid jokes. Pretty good stupid jokes, but nonetheless jokes. Calvin Kattar versus Zalal. Calvin plus 310, Zalal minus 400. That line, I think it's accurate to a point, just given the success Zalal's had. This is a guy similar to Vince Morales, left the UFC, got cut. And yes, he beat bums on the regional scene, but it's how he beat these bums on the regional scene that was impressive. He was dominating them. He showed patience on the outside, better movement, and his jiu-jitsu game heavily improved. Now a black belt, and this guy, I don't know a damn thing about BJJ, let me explain, but when I know a black belt when I see one, and this guy's a legitimate black belt. He's not a Tyron Woodley black belt where he gets one submission and he's like, oh my God, this guy's a Gracie now. Like, Youssef Zalal has finally rounded out his game where I feel very comfortable that he can take this fight anywhere and look really good. Calvin Kattar, notoriously pretty difficult to take down, but when it comes down to it, Calvin is just limited as a fighter. He's not changed or evolved. There was a moment where he started implementing elbows, which was in his fight with Giga Chikadze. But when was that? That was 3 years ago. That was his last win. He's not implementing long range, distant shots like side kicks or any type of low kicks or teeps. No, that's Youssef Zalal's game. He is the master of distance, keeping it on the outside, better movement. And what it came down to was Youssef Zalal, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you might think something differently. But when I look at his fighting ability, he is one of the few fighters that can 100% utilize the space in the cage better than almost anyone I've seen. The way he moves around that cage, uses it to bounce off, to escape, really good footwork. His evolution has been incredible, and I've picked him to win in every single fight. I picked him as a at the time as a dog against Billy Q. I would have gone bigger on him had the line not shifted. Kind of bummed me out. And the way he handled him, that was his first black belt that he submitted in the UFC. And then he defeats Jarno Aarons. I don't recall if he's a black belt, but I'm going to say he's not. The way he handled him there. And Jarno Aarons, given whatever you think about the guy, he has good power, and he was smart enough to, take his back and get him down. The Jack Shore fight. What I find interesting about that fight, and why some people might think Zalal should not be minus 400, Shore was landing some good shots on Zalal. The thing is, I think Shore at this point, even though he's retired now, probably the better of the two against Zalal. Calvin Kattar and Jack Shore, because the threat of the takedown was there, which Zalal was a little hesitant. He didn't want to get taken down. The moment Zalal knew he was the better striker, I'm sorry, not the better striker, but the better grappler, because there was a moment there in the late round where he had the back and he was doing well against Shore on the ground. You can see his demeanor change, and the way he landed that knee with no telegraph, which was, I believe, the lead knee, just popped it up as he was going for the takedown. Incredible, man. That was a beautiful performance. And when I mentioned dudes that can get a arm triangle without jumping off to the side and just getting it from the mount, the fact that he could do that to a guy like Jack Shore, a legitimate black belt, shows me that this dude has been putting in the work. It's going to be really tough to beat Zalal right now, especially a guy like Kattar, who has trouble closing distance on guys with good movement. You look at the fight with him and Arnold Allen, for God's sakes. Arnold was just moving too much on the outside, skirting around, darting in, and Calvin had nothing for him. And I look at how he hurt his knee. He got frustrated that he couldn't get to Allen at any point, that the moment he thought he could land something, he threw something so uncharacteristic of that jumping flying knee that he got hurt, because he's like, hey, I might be able to land something. That's not something that Calvin Kattar does. He's a meat and potatoes kind of boxer. He's a fantastic striker. He's the better boxer compared to Zalal, but the low kicks are going to be there for Zalal. The spinning back kicks, the teeps, everything for Zalal. And the thing about Kattar is that, yeah, he has good takedown defense, but Zalal's trips are really good as well. He's going to get frustrated getting picked apart from the outside. And if you don't believe me, man, go watch the Aljo fight. Aljo's also picking him apart at range. He didn't need to shoot for his life in this fight. And that's what I found was incredible. He was just getting picked apart from the outside with kicks and just darting in. He was just too fast for Calvin. And Calvin at this age, I don't think he's got it in him anymore. This guy was a savage, absolute savage back in the day. And it's hard to say, I think his time has passed. He just never evolved. And now with a bum knee, and I just think he's gonna, I don't want to say I want him to retire. I would hope that he gets a win, because this dude put on some amazing fights back in the day, knocking people out with beautiful technique. But sometimes the sport passes you by, and guys like the 28-year-old Zalal are just going to be able to take over. So give me Zalal to win this one. I do think he's got the ability to submit Kattar. Kattar's difficult to submit. You can say that. Aljamain wasn't able to. It's just a different type of body that Zalal brings. He's so lanky and he's so good at getting these chokes that I'm going to pick him by sub just for the hell of it. More than likely, I think he's going to win this one by a decision. But I do think Zalal is on a different trajectory right now. And he's just been impressing the shit out of me as of late. So give me Zalal. Dude's even boinking Macy Barber, this dude is. Or maybe he's not. But that alone, props to you, my man. Moroccan double. And then main event here, we've got Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues. And what is that? Plus 155 for Cannonier, minus 190 for Rodrigues. This one's tough because we know with both of these guys, any situation where they get into a complete shootout, guys just swinging, either man can go down. Cannonier, he has fought the much better competition former champions. As I mentioned, he beat Sean Strickland. He fought Israel Adesanya. He fought the number 2 guy right now in Imavov. He fought the future champion in Caio Borralho. If you want to know why I think he's going to be the future champion, join the Discord, and you will know I cannot talk about that on the YouTube. Gregory Rodrigues, this dude, man, let me explain the way I foresee Gregory Rodrigues' run. This dude is going to come out here and he's going to knock out Jared Cannonier, make it look incredibly easy. He's going to come out here and do a number 1 contender fight with Imavov. He's going to knock him out. At this point, let's just say hypothetically, for my scenario to work, Dricus loses the belt to Chimaev. He's going to knock out Dricus. And then at this point, let's just say Chimaev got the flu again and there's a number 1, there's a vacant belt, and it's going to be Gregory Rodrigues versus Belal Muhammad moving up to middleweight. He's going to get knocked out by Belal Muhammad because he has fucking pillow fists, and that's how his chin works. This guy's chin is such an anomaly that he gets knocked out by dudes you least suspect. And I'm not saying that this dude, Bruno Ferreira, doesn't hit hard, but he's so much smaller than him, and he still landed that punch that did not look very hard. And that's a problem with Rodrigues. Why I'm so afraid of this dude, because he's got the skill. If this guy had a chin, this dude would be running through the entire division. He hits ridiculously hard. The guy has great jiu-jitsu, maybe not the best control or best takedowns, but he mixes things up well. His fight against Christian Leroy Duncan, it was honestly more impressive in my mind than I went back and rewatched it, and I was just not as impressed, but it was showing improvements, right? I was wanting to see how his head movement was in that fight, and he early on showed that he was moving his head a lot better instead of just like it stays on the one axis, which is just either front or back. He doesn't move it side to side, doesn't move his shoulders. He just kind of puts a high guard. Pisses me off. With a guy like Jared Cannonier, if he hits you just right, he can put anyone's lights out. But when I'm looking at Jared Cannonier, he's taken a ton of damage himself. He got TKO'd by Imavov, and he obviously hits hard, but he shows good recovery to a point where, I don't quite love it, but he does kind of back up, skirt around, make it difficult for him to get hit. But he's showing that more and more. Caio did it to him twice. Caio hits him in the early rounds, I believe round number 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to say 3. And he does that. He gets hurt. He gets wobbled. And you just see that glassy look in his eyes, skirting around, makes it hard for Caio to hit him. He does recover, and he does recover well. In that 5th round, that clean 1-2 that Caio hit him with was incredibly, let's just say it changed my mind, because when I mentioned sometimes it's just easier to let the referee do all the work, let's hit the guy, let him hit the ground. Had Caio not followed up with vicious ground and pound and woken up Cannonier, that would have been one of the nastiest walk away punch knockouts in a long time, because the way Jared hit the canvas was bad. His eyes were essentially rolled over, and I do think that would have stopped that fight. But Caio kind of hit him a few times, woke him up. And again, that recovery is there. Gregory hits hard. Cannonier hits hard. So it's a terrifying ordeal, right? I think Gregory's just so damn big, though. If Gregory makes the proper adjustments, he can win this one. We know how hard he hits. He can impose himself on Cannonier. I just don't feel comfortable saying that he's... man, that's a problem, though, if I'm going to be honest with you. Gregory can come out here and make it look really easy if he just hits Cannonier a few times. If Cannonier starts backing up against the cage like he does to recover, Gregory's going to unload on him, because Cannonier does not kind of throw back. It takes him a second to start throwing back, and if Rodrigues starts unloading on him against the cage, there's a very high likelihood he can knock out Cannonier. And then if he does hit it to the ground, he gets on top of him. Again, Rodrigues is a big boy. He can do some damage. When it comes to the wrestling, Cannonier, his takedown defense has improved, and Gregory's grappling isn't great. I mean, I see Christian Leroy Duncan surviving on the mat and getting back up. And to me, honest to God, that was one of the dumbest performances from Christian. He had to sniper him from the outside. He started clinching up with Rodrigues. I'm like, this dude. But when Rodrigues would hit him, you would see Christian kind of react in a way that like he would run away. He did not like it. I am leaning Rodriguez. I am leaning him by a knockout in the first 2 rounds. But this again it could be a nail biter because Cannonier, very good still, even at 40 years old. This guy is he is more than capable of coming out here and putting Rodriguez's lights out. It's just the younger guy, he's 32. He has shown improvements each step of the way. My issue is like even in that Leroy fight, he's getting damage done to him. And visually, Leroy was kind of hoping he just didn't get finished. He was fine losing that fight, and Rodriguez still took damage. So I would expect Rodriguez to be throwing heavy low kicks. Just for the love of God, move your head, and I think you can get past this guy. And Cannonier, if he wins this fight, I'd like for him to retire because like you see that Jimmy Crute fight. Like to me, Jimmy Crute, he he showed that he probably should not be fighting still, given the fact that Bellotta was able to take that ass whooping and still win the last 2 rounds. But the fact that he went to a draw, he's like, I might still have it. If they don't give him a guy like Prachnio next, brother, this guy's gonna get destroyed. And with Cannonier, yeah, I mean, he's hanging in there with the top guys, right? He's hanging in there with these dudes for a good amount of time. But how long is too long, right? He's 40. If he wins this fight, I'd like for him to retire. This dude, to me, he lived up to everything that he needed to. He dropped down in weight from heavyweight to light heavyweight to middleweight. A lot of people didn't necessarily think he was going to do well in that division, but he completely reinvented himself. So props to the guy for still looking good at 40, both fighting wise and, black don't crack, baby. Gregory, on the other hand, this dude looks like 58 years old after 2 terms in the White House. But yeah, give me Rodriguez to get this knockout in the first 2 rounds. This dude does hit incredibly hard. His hands have been getting better. I do, honest to God, think that Rodriguez is a little overrated. So that's what worries me about him. Overrated or not, the power is still there, the ability is still there, the athleticism is still there, the youth is still there. It's just his chin is so goofy, man. This guy's getting knocked out by welterweights, and then he takes shots from like Chidi and Kawani straight to the mush. They let him keep fighting, and he's perfectly fine and he wins the fight. So he's a mystery to me. So yeah, give me Rodriguez knockout in the first 2 rounds. If this gets extended and we start seeing Cannonier landing at will with that jab and just kind of pushing forward, this guy is known to make a comeback and start putting it on dudes. Marvin Vettori, for example. Marvin hurts him. And that's the biggest worry for me. Like, Marvin's hurting you. We've got Kyle hitting you with a 1-2. Beautiful 1-2. That visual was not pretty. Like, his brain shut off. That to me is like the indicator of like that's enough for this guy. So if Rodriguez can hit him with something straight down the middle, that'd be rough. So for that reason, give me Rodriguez to win this one by a knockout. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Johnny TigerBomb MMA, and I will see you next week.